Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. This is our Thursday edition of our sports week that covers all your Northeastern local sports, New York, Boston, and Philly, on Wednesday through Sunday, 8 to 10 a.m. You can see us live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. On Facebook, use the username at MacMan62. MacandJackSports.com for our shows, Instagram, Mac and Jack Sports, Twitter page, MacMan McGrath, and our website, Mac Sports Insiders. Like, follow, share, and subscribe where you can to help us keep growing. I'm Mac with my co-host Jack Hirsch, a legendary boxing writer and former president of the Boxing Writers Association, and our show's history gatekeeper. How you doing today, my New York friend?
I'm doing well after being off yesterday. Mac, you know who I gained a deep appreciation for yesterday?
Who's
For the
that?
first time, Wally Pipp. What he's meant to the American workforce. Now, for those who don't know, Wally Pipp in the 1920s took a day. He was a Yankee starting first baseman and a very good one. But he had to take a day off because he was feeling under the weather or had a little injury. So they put in as his sub a player called Lou Gehrig. Well, needless to say, Wally Pipp never found his way back in the lineup. So I'm going to be careful, as far as taking another day off. I mean, you had Keith Engelon, who was pretty good. And you have some other fill-ins in reserve. So I'm going to be a little hesitant as far as, missing a day.
Yeah, Keith did a real good Keith did a real good job filling in for you. We appreciate him coming in and filling in because, of course, sometimes we just need to take care of some personal business. And you had to do that yesterday, and he was gracious enough to fill in for us. So, Jack, today we have on the show boxing expert Iceman John Scully. He's scheduled to be on at 8:30. So until we get to him, let's go ahead and cover some of the updates and sports information. Head coach of the Eagles, Peterson, he defends Carson Wentz about comments by his friend, ex-quarterback Brett Favre, stating what Brett Favre said was that the Eagles should have kept Foles as starting quarterback. And, of course, the head coach, Peterson, he said that Carson is our guy. Again, here's somebody else coming out about Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz sometimes looks like the best quarterback in the league on some of the throws and situations, but he's been making a lot of mistakes reading the defense and throwing balls, holding on to the ball too long, Jack. I mean, I know it's not a big deal, but Brett Favre is a Hall of Famer.
Brett Favre is very opinionated, but I'm starting to get tired of all this Carson Wentz talk. Every week, should the Eagles keep Carson Wentz? Well, who are they going to get to replace him?
Right.
He's going way back in the past, Brett Favre. They should have kept Nick Foles. Well, guess what? Nick Foles, when he left the Eagles, he had a stopover for the Jacksonville Jaguars. They signed him to a nice contract thinking he would be their number one starter. Nick Foles could not cut it. It's the Jacksonville Jaguar starting quarterback. People think he just went from the Eagles to Chicago Bears. No, he had a stopover in Jacksonville. Nick Foles is along the lines of a Frank Reich. He's a great backup type. The team can win with him. You need the Nick Foles type players on your team. He did a great job coming in, relieving Carson Wentz when he was with the Eagles. But what people forget, in the Eagles Super Bowl year, Carson Wentz had a hell of a year.
Yeah.
He took them to the water. And then Nick Foles took them into the water, for the nice swim that they had to the Super Bowl. So the Eagles are going to have, if they don't want Carson Wentz, what's the alternative? And don't tell me Jalen Hurts, because Jalen Hurts has to get the reps. And when are they going to find the time to give him the reps? They're just not going to be able to.
You know, Jack, we had the Eagles sports guy on yesterday. He has a lot of knowledge. He looks crazy all painted up, but really he's well-spoken, has a lot of knowledge about the Eagles. And he said that, you know, that Hurst was actually working as a wide receiver, and with the wide receiver problems the Eagles have, he thought it'd be a good idea to maybe put him in the slot, let him work as a wide receiver, you know, and still be there for an emergency backup, and maybe even run some of them gadget plays they use him for. But when they put him in, everybody knows he's going to run, and the gadget plays don't work, and you're taking your best quarterback off the field, which doesn't make sense to me at all. I mean, I understand you want to try, you know, the Wildcat formation came. People were not ready for it. They are now. So, I mean, I kind of see his point where if you use him as a slot receiver, which he has speed, he has great hands, or at least good hands that I know of. So why not move him to slot, and you still got your emergency quarterback there if you need him?
You know, I'm going back into the 1960s when the Denver Broncos had this quarterback, Marlon the Magician Briscoe. Okay,
Wow.
Really good quarterback, moved around well in the pocket. They turned him into a wide receiver. I never really liked that. That had other connotations of the time, of the era, the 1960s. He turned out to be a good receiver for the Broncos, and then ironically was traded to the Miami Dolphins and was part of their, you know, Super Bowl winning teams.
Yeah.
So for him, the story wasn't a bad one because of that. But what experience does Jalen Hurts have as a NFL caliber receiver? I want to know.
Yeah,
He played wide receiver in high school, that he's a great athlete. He's this, he's that. I mean, what are they going to do? Line him up as a wide receiver, throw him a pass, you know, behind the line of scrimmage, and then let him run around and then pass the ball down the field? I think these gadget plays, Mac, are really, after a while, they get to be too much of a distraction if they become part of your package.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Jack. I mean, the gadget plays or the special plays that they have for certain people, it works sometimes. I mean, if he's a regular part of the team, if he's a regular wide receiver, he's got speed. So, I mean, if you're running a reverse to him or some kind of trick play, or even if he can just, you know, break down the inside of the defense as a slot receiver, if he can, Jack, you know, we don't know for sure because we haven't seen him try it yet. But it seems like it's a wasted draft pick if you don't use him because they drafted him so high. So all he was saying, and I kind of agree with, at least get what's worth for him. I mean, at least try something with the guy that might work, and maybe he becomes a good slot receiver, Jack.
Well, I got to tell you, this may have backfired on the Philadelphia Eagles when they drafted Jalen Hurts, because people were of the opinion they were sending a message to Carson Wentz or looking to ultimately replace Carson Wentz. But the Eagles simply may have been picking the best player available on the board, pure and simple.
Right.
That may have been their logic, and they may have not fully realized the repercussions. Because I'm going to tell you something. As soon as you get on the phone and you call your starting quarterback like Carson Wentz to let him know that he's the starting quarterback after you draft someone, that means you're on thin ice. I mean, even an all-time great like Aaron Rodgers, when the Packers drafted Jordan Love and they moved up to draft Jordan Love in the draft, you're sending a little bit of a message to your quarterback, even though that might not be your intention. You're kind of sticking it to him. In other words, you're starting the clock on him as far as how long he's going to be with the franchise.
I definitely see that point. The top 5 draft picks, they're rated 3 out of the 5 projected are of course, surprise quarterbacks, right? Of course, you have Lawrence, Justin Fields, who's playing great, and a guy named Zach Wilson from BYU, who's having a phenomenal year. They have an offensive tackle from Oregon, and they also have a linebacker from Penn State that round off the projected top 5. So, I mean, Lawrence, of course, everybody thinks he's going to be number one. Justin Fields is making a case for it. And maybe the sleeper this year is going to be Zach Wilson from BYU, Jack.
There's such a long way to go before the draft. Not only the games that are being played, but then when they go into, when all the college players basically are brought together. And what's the exact word for that, Mac? I'm having like a little moment here. It's not tryout.
The combine? You talking about the combine?
Exactly. Perfect, Mac. Combine. When they're all together at the combine, that's when the ultimate decisions are made. Okay. Yeah. The only time you're not made at the combine is if one player is so head and shoulders above the others during the games played that it's obvious they're the ones who should be taken. But the combines play such a big role. And then the interview process.
Sure.
They bring the player in and they give them this psychological evaluation. Then they do an FBI thing on the guy. They look into the kid's background. Does he have any issues? Does he have any this? Does he have any that? That's why a great player like Warren Sapp, he slipped in the draft because they thought there were certain issues involved. And we hear so much of the time that a player would have been drafted a lot higher, but because an incident took place, and so much goes into it, and we really have such a long way to go. But it's fun speculating.
Definitely. So I mean, the draft process, Jack. It starts, of course, with the scouts. Coaches talk to the scouts. Sometimes coaches talk to coaches through back channels about prospects. And as you said, if someone's head and shoulders above, they normally even will do pro days because of an injury or maybe because they don't want to be, put up against the rest of the players. And, even with the interview, Jack, they'll have them, as I've seen before, break down tape of what they're going to do and why they did what they did. And it gives them more a clear understanding of what the player's thinking during certain plays or how we would react to certain situations in the NFL. It's a very long process. It starts probably when the kid is a junior or sophomore if he shows potential, and it carries through. So you're right. The combine is used a lot to influence who the first round draft choices are. In case, as you say, like somebody like Trevor Lawrence, he's pretty much already proven what he's worth. And if he throws, some passes out during the combine, it really doesn't matter.
And I'm not crazy about how they conduct the combines. They line the player up and they have him sprint to see could he do a 4.4, how high his vertical jump is, and the whole bit. And, they're two different things. There's quick running, when you're under the clock and they're testing you. And then there's football speed.
Sure.
There's instincts. That's how you get off the ball. And you can't really tell that completely at the combine.
Right.
So, yeah, there's so many elements that go into it.
I definitely agree with that. And of course, they also, Jack, they use, believe it or not, the college all-star games where they actually do drills one-on-one against other players, and they all take a look at that too. So, I mean, it's a very long process, and you can tell the best scouting I see is when the higher teams go down in the lower rounds and they find somebody that everybody else has missed. So we have the Texans are in the news. They fire the vice president of communication, Amy Palcic or Palkic. I one of those two pronunciations I think is right. She is the only female fully in charge of PR and NFL. They're getting a big backlash. She was let go. The reason was she was no longer a cultural fit, whatever that means. She just won the Pete Rozelle Award for Best PR Staff in 2017, 3 years ago. That is just a generic reason. I don't know what that means. But being a high-profile person and a female in a NFL team getting fired because she's no longer a cultural fit has raised some eyebrows and has been commented on by a lot of different people in the media.
Mac, I don't know whether to Texans were justified in this firing or not. I really don't know anything about her. But I will say this, if we're talking about living in a world of equal rights, men are getting fired all the time, whether it's justly or unjustly. And if it's unjust in her situation, I mean, what's the reason why exactly? Because right now, the Texans, their image isn't exactly the best. They've been underachievers.
Sure.
The heated argument with J.J. Watt and Bill O'Brien came out, and their team that's obviously having a certain amount of dysfunction. And I'm not saying it's her fault at all, but a PR person has to put the right spin on it. And whether she would be capable of doing it, anyone would be capable of putting the right spin on it, I don't know. All I'll say this, if it was a man getting let go, would anyone even be talking about it this morning? So if we're talking about equal rights, which we should absolutely have in society, it's got to be done across the board. It can't be argued, well, someone's getting fired because of their gender, because of this, or because of that. It's got to be equal all the way across the board.
Yeah, I mean, I look at that too with, with the coach and both serving as coach and GM, O'Brien being fired. They might just want to clean house over there. Yeah. I'm not sure if that's the reason or not, but just to say, she's no longer a cultural fit. I mean, they should have given probably
absolutely. I don't like that term, no longer cultural fit. What is meant by that?
Right.
They came out with that statement.
Right. And that you're just asking for trouble when you give that as a reason.
Yeah.
Ed McCaffrey, he's going to be out in the KC game because he's been re-injured, Jack. Again, this is the highest paid running back in the league. It gives a lot of people on the side that say running backs shouldn't be making a lot of money compared to quarterbacks or even wide receivers in certain circumstances. He set all the records, and he's out again. It's happened with a couple running backs. You got Zeke Elliott. Barkley's coming up on a contract. It makes teams think. I mean, is it financially a good idea to sign a running back to $15 million a year, Jack?
It is if you get a truly great running back. I mean, where the Titans going to get someone like Derrick Henry, for example? They're playing tonight, the Titans.
Right.
But if you get it's a risky thing. Running backs have the ball in their hands a lot. They're tackled a lot. The defense falls on them. There's a greater injury risk to them than there is to a wide receiver.
Sure.
Only has a limited amount of touches per game compared to a running back. But that's the league. You plan things out meticulously, and players go down with injuries. Some players are a little more injury prone than others. I mean, one of the great running backs in the league, or who should be one's Todd Gurley.
Right.
Todd Gurley wasn't as drafted as high as he should have been coming out of college because he'd had the knee injury. There were concerns and so on. But he's there playing. He's effective. He's an excellent running back right now. So you don't know. I mean, it's kind of a gamble all the time, and it's but running backs, if you could get a great running back, he's the ultimate weapon in the backfield. I mean, he's worth it. I don't underestimate running backs at all. You go back a while with me, Mac. Come on. Gale Sayers, Eric Dickerson, guys like that, O.J. Simpson, running backs like that. Don't tell me that they're overrated and anyone else could just fill in their slot if there's good blocking, because the instincts play such a big part in it.
You are right, Jack, to that point where, there's a difference between a good running back and a great running back. I agree with almost everything you said. I think players get paid too much overall, but that's up to the team. McCaffrey is not built like Henry. He's a smaller back. He's strong. He's quick. He's got a lot of speed. He's very fast. Derrick Henry is more in your face. He does have quickness and speed, but he's a bigger guy. He can take more punishment. It's two different backs, Jack. I don't know the answer to that, whether he's worth it or not. But I think a lot of teams, just because of this, and Gurley's another great point, are going to be looking, at what happened to McCaffrey and whether it's worth it or not, whether it's fair or not. The head coach of Tampa Bay, he wants a smaller role for Antonio Brown this week. I was surprised how much they went to Antonio Brown being his first game with the Bucs. The Bucs got embarrassed by the Saints. The defense shut them down. When you bring in, and I talked about this yesterday, Jack, a little bit. When you bring in more talent than you already have and probably already need, there's only one football. And, you can only throw to so many people. And if you start throwing to a receiver that hasn't been on a team yet, that definitely is one of the greatest in his prime of all time, Antonio Brown. But when you bring him in and you already got all those weapons, I mean, to me, it makes it a little bit more harder to get in some kind of flow in the offense, because you want to get him the ball, but yet you got all these weapons around you anyway. And these wide receivers and tight ends that have been there and that have worked with Tom Brady, I don't know if bringing Antonio Brown onto the Tampa Bay Buccaneers was a good idea, Jack.
The whole question comes down to, is he going to be a good citizen? That's all it is. If Antonio Brown is going to behave himself, buy into the team concept, how could you not want a guy like that? He's an all-time great. How could you not want him to be thrown to a lot because he's an all-time great? Tampa Bay was dreadful against New Orleans. I mean, they were awful. By the time Brady started throwing to Antonio Brown, they were in a big hole, Tampa Bay. Brady had to try something a little different to give the team a spark. If Antonio Brown could give them a spark at that time, so be it, because things were going so bad. I mean, it was just a dreadful nightmare game for Tampa Bay. As far as Bruce Arians wanting him to have a smaller role, like he basically said for next week, because Antonio Brown's new to the team. He doesn't want to elevate Antonio Brown ahead of the other players on the offense. It doesn't set a good example for team chemistry. And we don't know how the other players are reacting on the team on offense. They could be mumbling. They could be annoyed. Maybe they saw Bruce Arians on the side. But I think we're getting a little carried away right now, because Antonio Brown, in his brief stint with Tampa Bay so far, hasn't done anything wrong. What's he supposed to say? Don't throw me the ball? I mean,
Jack, I'm not even talking about Antonio Brown's attitude or whether he's a good citizen or not. The only point I'm making is they didn't even try to establish a running game, which they do have a great running game. They got two wide receivers that are very, very good. They got tight ends, including Gronk, who's starting to come on, that are a big part of their offense now. And all I'm saying is bringing him in to that first game, which as a coach, honestly, I wouldn't even have played him, to bring him in and start throwing to him. And I think there definitely is a personal relationship between Brady and Antonio Brown. I think you're asking for problems. I think out of respect to the other players, I think in your offensive game plan, you should probably pretty much do what you're doing. Antonio Brown is a piece that might put you over the top. He shouldn't be a main piece, especially in his first week with Tampa Bay, and that's all I'm saying.
Well, with Rodney Jones and Leonard Fournette in the backfield, I mean, you have two outstanding running backs, but the game with the Saints was an aberration. You sometimes, have a nightmare game like that. And for Tampa, that was a reality check. They're at 6-3 right now. That game against New Orleans was a big, big game. And I don't know whether, Mac, the feeling in sports. You're really psyched for the big game. Really, really psyched. And you're playing a major rival and you get blown out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a reality check. All of a sudden, you start doubting yourselves. Tampa Bay went from a potential Super Bowl favorite in that game to a big question mark over 1 week. And they play the Carolina Panthers this week, your favorite team. Despite being 3-6, the Panthers have been in each game. They've been extremely competitive. And if Carolina beats them, which is a distinct possibility, The Buccaneers are going to be at 6-4. And now we're not talking about a special season. We're talking about them maybe getting in the playoffs as a wild card, not as one of the favorites to go to the Super Bowl. And now you talk about the question marks coming. Who's to blame?
Right.
And what are they going to do? They're going to turn to Antonio Brown because he's the easiest one basically to blame. Even if he does nothing wrong per se, people are going to say, well, is his addition messing up team chemistry?
Right,
and
right.
really, they would have gotten blown out by the New Orleans Saints, whether Antonio Brown was there or wasn't
Definitely agree.
there. I think too much is being made of it right now. Wait till Antonio Brown pulls an Odell Beckham Jr., starts ranting and raving on the sideline, starts arguing with teammates. If that goes down, then come and talk to me about it. Otherwise, let's just focus on.
I think it was wrong for Arias to come out in the media and say that too. That's something that should be handled in-house with the team. Roger Staubach supports Dak Prescott as a future Dallas QB. Now, I didn't think this was in question. I mean, I thought everybody agreed with that pretty much. I mean, Dak Prescott is a dynamic quarterback who plays very well. His statistics prove it. He's not on defense for sure, and that was the Cowboys' weakness during the last couple of years. So, I mean, it's good, I think, that Roger said something, but I didn't even think that was in question, Jack.
No, not at all. What people never discuss when they're mentioning whether someone should be a team's franchise quarterback or not, who's going to replace him? Who else are you going to get? We were talking early in the show about Carson Wentz. Who's going to replace him?
Right.
No one ever has an answer for that. And they'll say, oh, well, they'll draft someone. Yeah, right, sure. Okay, and Zach Prescott, he's hurt. He'll come back from the injury next year. He'll be fine. What his contract situation is going to be, I don't know. Zach Prescott, to me, is not one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the NFL. So I don't think he should be getting paid as such. And that's what he's kind of been holding out for. But we'll see. Push comes to shove. Something has to be worked out. But it's interesting. If Zach Prescott doesn't bend from some of his demands, they just might let him go and they might just move on.
Yeah.
It's going to be very, very interesting what's going to go on in Dallas.
Tonight, Jack, we got the Colts against the Titans. The Titans bounced back with a win this week. They've been on a 2-game losing streak before that. Everybody started giving pub to the Colts because they had a couple good games there, but they lost last week. The Colts got a good defense, Jack, a decent running game. And to me, signing Phillip Rivers, I don't know if that was a good move or not. I mean, he's still one of the greatest quarterbacks. You could make an argument, one of the greatest quarterbacks in history of NFL. If you look at his stats, he's from that draft class of Manning and Big Ben. And I think he was just a little too old. It kind of reminds me of a couple other quarterbacks that left and weren't as good as they were. Johnny Unitas for one of the examples. I mean, Unitas was done. Joe Namath that went to different teams. I mean, I think Rivers is playing above of what they did when they went to other teams. But I don't think he was the answer if they wanted to go to the playoffs or championship. I don't know, Jack. I think the Titans win pretty easy tonight.
I'm not that sure about that. The Titans really haven't had that good of a pass rush this year. And the Colts have had one of the best offensive lines. So you figure it out. I mean, the team without a great pass rush against the team with a great offensive line, meaning there's going to be plenty of time for Indianapolis to throw the football and to move the football and to score points. So it's going to be I think it's going to be a very interesting game, a very close game that could go either way. As far as Phillip Rivers went, when you get a 38-year-old quarterback like that, you're basically getting him for win now mode. I mean, that's what Indianapolis is in, a win now mode. And what was their backup? What was their alternative? To keep sticking with Jacoby Brissett. And Jacoby Brissett is a a nice backup quarterback in the mold of a Nick Foles. Yeah, you could win with him. He could play a number of games in a row. He could come in the big spot. But if you're sticking with him for the long term, you're going to have a bit of a problem. We were laughing, talking about quarterbacks with the ultimate relief pitchers to come in for the starters. Well, Jacoby Brissett would be a top 5.
Yeah.
If we're saying Nick Foles is number 1. So they're in a real win now mode. And they probably thought Indianapolis that Phillip Rivers had more in the tank than other people did. And if you give Phillip Rivers time to throw, he's still very effective, still very good.
Right. I agree with that. I just don't think, maybe Phillip Rivers 5 years ago or 6 years ago would have been a great quarterback for a win now. Right now, I don't know about it, Jack. I don't think he's close to what he was. I think he's fell off significantly. But,
Well, Mac, the Colts are 5-3 at the halfway point.
Right.
So they're on pace, perhaps, to get a wild card. Let's do the math. 16 games, 5-3. If they go 5-3 again, they'll go 10-6. Not bad.
Right.
It's not better than they, hope to do, but it's about what they expected to do with Phillip Rivers.
Right.
So so there's no reason to panic in Indy, right now. And Phillip Rivers, I'll tell you, when you talk about the greatest quarterbacks of all time who never made it to a championship game, in Phillip Rivers' case, the Super Bowl, he's one of the best quarterbacks ever who hasn't gone to a Super Bowl. And Phillip Rivers, to me at least, is a Hall of Famer.
Okay, yeah.
Inducted in when the time comes. But how do you think he feels? He won his whole career, with the San Diego Chargers before this. And they never got to the dance. They just rode by their car. And they were told there's no spots in the parking lot for them. They turned around, went elsewhere. So
Great analogy, Jack. We're waiting for Iceman to come on. Hopefully he makes it in today. But for now, Jack, you got some updates with golf. I'm not going to get into golf. I'm not the biggest golf fan. I never really played. I've gone to the driving range, played a little putt golf. Never was, never a big sport for me to watch. But we do have the Masters. Is that right, Jacob?
The Masters. I'm not a golf guy. I'm learning.
Yeah.
So for those of you out there who like golf, I'm trying to learn. I never played golf before. No, I take that back. I played miniature golf.
There you go.
Okay, and I used to even cheat at the end of the game. They used to have a thing, win a free game if you could get a hole in one, miniature golf. But what I used to do, I got to admit, I was a kid. I have a confession. I cheated. I would roll the ball by my hand, and I'd get that occasional free game of golf. But it's the Masters. Everyone's heard of the Masters and the green jacket, at the end. And last year was the ultimate heartwarming story for many when Tiger Woods won it. Now, Tiger Woods' image was awful for a while, awful. And let's be honest about it, Tiger was not a good guy, as far as dealing with the public goes, at least. His personal life, even though that became public knowledge, at the end of the day, that's really his business. So I'm not going to judge him on that. He wasn't an athlete who ever really interacted with the public. And reportedly, the fellow players despised him. He wasn't, nice with them. And that's rare for an athlete. You look at other iconic athletes like Michael Jordan, even though he'd ride players hard, there was a certain amount of respect and interaction and camaraderie with a lot of the opposition.
Jack, I'm going to interrupt you really quick because our guest has shown up. We do have the Iceman back stage waiting to come on, and we're going to bring him up and talk a little bit about one of my favorite sports, boxing.
I don't like boxing, but I'll take a pass on this one.
You look great right there, John, right there where your view is. So how you doing today, Iceman? Glad to have you on.
Everything's great, man. How you guys doing?
I'm a little upset, John, because I was talking golf, and I have to interrupt my golf talk to talk about boxing. I'm sick of boxing.
I can't believe people watch golf. that's that's
No,
a
golf is a
phenomenon
great.
in
Listen,
itself.
golf is a great sport. I don't play it, but a lot of people like to go out and play golf. But what used to get me, John Mac, the old-time players, old-time athletes thought they were keeping in shape by playing golf. I remember Whitey Ford on an interview. They asked him, what did he and Mickey Mantle do in the off season to keep in shape? And he said they played golf to keep in shape. Now, the walking, if you're going to walk 18 holes, that's great. You get a certain amount of exercise on your legs. I understand that. But can you imagine you ask an athlete today, a world-class athlete, what are you doing to keep in shape during your off season? And they say they're playing golf to keep in shape. What about one of the fighters you train? If you ask him what he's doing between fights to keep in shape and he's telling you he plays golf,
That's
you want
funny.
to strangle him, right?
Listen, I played golf once in my life, once. And one of my fighters went to the Marines and he got hooked on golf. And he's telling me, "Oh, it's awesome. It's addictive and it's really competitive." And he's just every time I talk to him, he's telling me how great golf is. So he comes home on leave for a couple of weeks. So we go to this golf course. And we get there. The first hole is up on a hill and you hit the ball really far. I said, "Oh, this is pretty cool. You know, I hit it pretty far." It was downhill from that moment on. It was the most boring game. And by the seventh hole, and I'm telling him, like, we got to do this all day. Like, we got to do this 18 holes, but let's just leave. And he goes, "Nah, we got to finish." We got to the 13th hole. There was a pond. And to get to the next hole, you had to hit it over the pond. Well, we had eight balls altogether, 4 each. I hit 4 in the pond. He hit 4 in the pond. We had no more balls left. Game was over. And we went home. And I've never played again.
Listen, just a topic that's semi-related to this. It's not exactly like golf. That's interesting. Certain boxers, when they're in training camp to relax, they like to play chess. Now, Emmanuel Stewart hated when Lennox Lewis played chess. He hated it because he said that resulted in Lennox Lewis being too analytic in the ring. Instead of letting his hands go and just fighting, he calculated too much because of the games he played chess. So he thought chess was very bad for Lennox Lewis to play.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
I like the psychology of it. Yeah, I like it.
Okay.
So Iceman, let's get to a little bit of boxing news here. Mickey Garcia says he's interested in moving down to 140 to fight Davis or Lopez if they move to that weight class. What do you think about those? That as a matchup? I mean, this is I guess this would be a comeback for him, a legitimate comeback. Would there be any interest in that?
I mean, I think so. There's so many good fights in and around that weight class. It's unbelievable. Like the last month has been phenomenal for boxing and for that weight class. I think anybody would like to see Mikey Garcia fight these guys, but it's not just him. There's so many guys in and around that weight class. Things are really looking up as far as that goes.
I think Mikey Garcia's window has partly closed. He was supposed to be years ago an up-and-coming superstar when he was promoted by Top Rank. Now, fighters have problems with their promotional companies all the time. So Mikey Garcia decided the only way to break his contract with Top Rank, which he couldn't really break, but no one could force him to fight. So he became very inactive for a long time until the contract ran out. And then Mikey Garcia's playing hardball. He wanted to be a free agent all the time. And you just can't be that in boxing. So he's holding out as if he's a megastar like Oscar De La Hoya or Sugar Ray Leonard. Like John could tell you, Mac, very few fighters can hold out and have the upper hand. Otherwise, they have to sign with a promotional company. And then, of course, he had to fight with Errol Spence, in which he got trounced over the distance. And Mikey Garcia is still very capable. Not to say he couldn't beat another elite fight on a given night, but somehow his window as a potential megastar, I feel, is closed. I mean, what do you think of that, John?
Yeah, I mean, well, the business has ruined more fighters. The mentality of business, guys get into it, and they it used to be where fighters just talked about fighting. Now they talk about endorsement deals and contracts and all these different things. And I think so many guys are too involved. They don't let their business people handle it. They handle it more. I don't know if it's I guess it's the money. They feel like they want to get more money, so they do all these different strategies, and ultimately it just it equates to them not fighting. There's so many guys who they've been pro for 6-7 years, and they still only have 20 fights. Where not even that long ago, you would have 35 fights. The game has changed. The mentality has changed. And Mayweather, he did great for himself, great fighter, the whole nine. But his whole mentality has rubbed off on so many guys, and I think it's been a serious detriment to the sport overall.
Keith Thurman is said to be targeting Ugas for the WBA 147-pound title. He thinks, again, this is another fighter looking for a comeback. Do you think that would be a good fight if they could get that arranged, Iceman?
I mean, I would like to see it, but Keith is another one. He hasn't fought in quite a while, and these guys don't fight. Like the fact is, and then again, Mayweather fought in May and September of every year. He was a pro. He had 50 fights, but he was a pro for 23 years. I mean, that's ridiculous. 50 fights in 23 years. I mean, like back in the day, guys like Harry Greb and those, they had 50 fights in a year. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying they should have that kind of schedule, but man, once or twice a year
if those guys were living in today's era, they wouldn't be fighting much. I mean, it's the nature of the business. That's all it is to it. I mean,
but here's the thing:
45 fights in 1 year. He would be fighting 3 times a year. 45. Yeah, he'd be fighting 3 times a year if he were, around today. It's just the way it is. The business has changed.
Well, that's my point. It's not a good thing. I'm saying it's not. Look at James Toney. Look at James Toney. James Toney used to fight all the time. Even in between his title fights, he would have non-title fights. And he fought guys like Ricky Thomas and Daniel Garcia in non-title fights, like tough fights. He would keep busy. He was the last guy I remember who really had his finger on the pulse of what it took to stay sharp. These guys now, they're not interested in staying sharp. Like that's Ray Robinson and those guys. They took fights to stay sharp, and they wanted to maximize their skills. These guys today aren't doing that. That mentality is lost 100%. It's not about maintaining and sharpening your skills. It's just about taking what you have and using that to make as much money as you can.
Mac, you mentioned Keith Thurman, Mac, before. Certain fighters, Mac, I think are basically looking to cash out like a Keith Thurman. Keith Thurman had injuries that put him on the shelf. That's understood. But you get the feeling in the case of certain fighters like Keith Thurman, they fight, they get a big payday, then they're off a while, and they want to get another big payday. They kind of want to cash out.
Yeah. I definitely understand that. For people watching right now, we're with John Iceman Scully, boxing expert, multiple Golden Glove champion, middleweight, light heavyweight title contender, ESPN boxing analysis, an analyst, a writer, and a trainer of champions. And every week we have you on here, Iceman. And I want to start getting into the training aspect, which you're very good at. And, we look at boxing and other sports and we see the finished product. We watch the fight. But to be in that situation, it takes unbelievable amount of work to get to be that position, to not just be in a championship fight, but just a fight, period. So next to football, boxing is my passion. I love boxing. And you've trained some champions your day. You're training one right now with Better Beef. So can you, and to tap into your knowledge a little bit and just start basically the kind of shape you have to be in just to get in the ring, what kind of, aerobic and weightlifting and different training you got to do just to get in even before you really start sparring seriously?
Well, I'll say this. People need to understand, like, I have guys all the time tell me they'll come in the gym, they could box, they could fight, they can do this. They are cross country athletes, so they play football and this type of thing. It's a different sport. A lot of it is the mentality of fighting with someone, and the threat of getting hurt drains you in a way that is not there in other sports. And I'll give you an example. I'll give you a perfect example. Now, you would think all athletes would be, in great shape, right? They're in great shape. Now, there was a kid, I don't know if you follow football like this, but he passed away a couple years ago. There was a kid named Asaf Schwab, who was a running back for Notre Dame. Yeah, great guy. One of the nicest kids I knew. He grew up near me. Asaf was 250 pounds, built, like rock solid. Like, he was huge. And so one day he was in the gym. I was actually training his younger brother. And I said to Asaf, now he was an All-American running back at Notre Dame, right? Yeah. So this guy's elite. I say, man, you ever want to try some boxing? And at the time, I was like 40, 44. And I say, want to spar a little bit? And he's like, okay. So he gets in there. Now, the only reason he was able to last more than one round is because I talked him into doing two. Because I said, look, man, you got to do 2 rounds. You can't just do one. Everybody's watching. You're Asaf Schwab. You got to do 2. I said, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm going to take it easy. I'm not going to hit you hard. So he huffed and puffed his way through 2 rounds of sparring. At any time that I wanted to put, and I'm not talking about just as a professional hurting him, but I'm talking about just putting pressure on to make him gas out, I could have done that ridiculously easily. And my point is, this is a high-level running back in football. Boxing was a totally different world to him. He couldn't believe how exhausted he was. I saw another guy. I don't want to say his name. He's in the NFL. He's a monster. He's a 300-pound guy in the NFL. I saw him get so exhausted in one round of sparring, I thought we were going to have to call paramedics. I honestly thought we were going to have to call no, really. I really thought we were going to have to call paramedics. I said, this guy's going to die. Like, he's going to, and he was at the time like 21 years old. And I've run into that so many times where people can't believe how exhausting it is to try and fight another human being. You get guys that want to box. We had these 2 guys want to fight each other, and they said, all right, we want to box. We want to settle this. We want to do 4 rounds. I'm like, 4 rounds? I said, you're not going to do 1 round. I said, I'm going to let you guys hit each other until you quit, and then we're going to go home. And they were mad at me, and they were kind of rough guys. And I said, okay, I'll set the clock. No exaggeration. 30 seconds in, they both quit, like, shamelessly, because they were so exhausted they couldn't do anything. It was a waste of time. And it's just that kind of sport. It takes extreme, like, physical ability to last, and mental ability to last even 1 round of boxing. It's incredible. And so part of it is, when I get a guy coming to the gym and he's an athlete and he's this and he's that, and he says he really wants to fight, and I say, listen, right now, sitting here outside the ring, and you've been dreaming about being a fighter for 2 years, and you really want to do this, I go, let's have you spar, and another guy at your level. Your opinion on and your desire level might be very, very different after we do this. And so some guys literally after they spar one time, you never see them again. They realize it. They're too far down on the mountain to ever get to the top of it. Some guys, they embrace it. So that's a big part of boxing is the ability to withstand the mental aspects of even being in a ring, let alone using skill to do something.
Well, John, in a lot of sports, you get breaks, right? In football, you run and then you get in a huddle, or you got a timeout, or you got a quarter change. And people don't realize I did spar a long time ago in fun. I wasn't looking to be a boxer. I wasn't that crazy. But that 3-minute round and that 1 minute rest is nothing. I mean, after you go down the 3 minutes and you go to that corner for a minute, that bell rings, you're back in again. It's like, holy Jesus, you don't realize how short a break that is. And it did discourage me to really try to do that. Not that, I love watching it. I love what goes into any sport, the training and stuff. And that's why I wanted to ask you, because a lot of people, like I said, they look at that running back, or they look at that wrestler, or they look at that boxer, and they say, he should have done this, he should have done that. When these people honestly don't realize what goes into becoming a decent boxer, never mind one that was at your level or even above your level, I mean, that's remarkable to me. So that's why I wanted to, to talk.
It's phenomenal what it takes to like when you see guys box 12 rounds. I mean, you're talking world class ability, physical ability. It's incredible. And I'll tell you a perfect example. And a lot of people watching this will understand this. When I was a kid growing up, I used to hear about the Marines and how intense training was, the boot camp. And they said, most people can't handle Marine boot camp training. It's so intense. It's so tiring. You've really got to be in physical shape to get it done. So I'm, my whole life, I'm thinking of this, unbelievable stuff. I had a boxer. He started boxing when he was 14. He went to the Marines when he was 18. He finished number 2 or 3. I believe it was 2. In his class of, however many guys were in that class, physical and everything. He told me, he said, I actually got a little out of shape being in boot camp in the Marines compared to what I was doing. But no, he was serious. He said, I actually got a little out of shape. He goes, it was easy. It was ridiculously easy. And all the other guys were dying. He said boxing was way harder than the Marine training, boot camp. So I'll take his word for it.
That's why, Iceman, I respect you unbelievably. I respect Jack to even get in there and spar with a great Vito Antuofermo. And, he did his little sparring there. I mean, just me fooling around just exhausted me to death. I mean, I can imagine what goes into.
Well, with Vito Antuofermo in the amateurs, he would be going at half speed and I would be going at 100% all out. But after 2 rounds, that would be it for me. I would be staggering out of the ring. And I did a lot of running. Okay. I was in shape, but 2 rounds of him coming at you. And then another sparring partner would come in for 2 rounds. And then after that, a third sparring partner would come in for 2 rounds with Vito. But it was really the exhaustion. I mean, the elite fighters have a way also, John, like, you could expand on that. They know how to relax when they're in the ring. There's a certain relaxation. Otherwise, you're fighting kind of like as if you're sprinting, and that doesn't last for too long. So, pacing yourself, there's a certain art to that.
Well, I'm going to tell you a funny thing, and then I'm going to give you a trivia question since you mentioned Antuofermo. I always say, my quote, a lot of people really like this. I say, if you can't fight when you're tired, then you can't fight. And what that means is plenty of guys look great when they feel good, but you get a guy, and I'll tell you the ultimate perfect example. James Toney, out of shape with a belly, could fight 10 rounds and win and knock guys out. He knows how to fight when he's tired. Now, with my experience, right, I sparred one time, and this was after I retired. This was in 2011 or 12. I sparred with 7 guys 4 rounds apiece. 7 guys, 4 rounds apiece.
28 rounds?
With no problem at all. With ridiculous ease. With ridiculous ease. This was in, I believe, 2011 or 2012. With ridiculous ease. It was nothing because I know how to relax. I'm used to it. The ability to not relax is unbelievably fatiguing. I'll give you one quick example, and this will be, I went to Bally's Health Club. I was going to try and implement a program at Bally's where they could hire former boxers all over the country to do personal training with people with boxing. So the guy said, well, let me see what you have in mind. So he brought over 2 of his strength, what do you call them, personal trainers. One was a really big guy, like a football player, and the other one was a small guy. He goes, all right, work them out a little bit. Show me what you would do. No exaggeration. These guys died during the warm-up. I was having them warm up, and one of them stopped. The big one stopped, and he's trying to catch his breath. And I said, man, what happened? And he goes, I just got to catch my breath. And I'm like, catch your breath? I go, this is the warm-up. We haven't even started yet. And we did the mitts. I skipped the warm-up, and I said, look, let's do the mitts. All I'm going to have you do is a 1-minute drill. And this is a true story. I said, I'm going to hold the mitts. You just punch the mitts for 1 minute. He died after 20 seconds. The other guy jumped in. He died after 15 seconds. These guys couldn't believe it. The manager of Bally's told me, he laughed. He goes, listen, I respect your idea, but listen, somebody's going to die. we're not going to do this. This wouldn't work. And that was the end of it. So the personal trainers in charge of getting people in shape at Bally's Health Club could not do my warm up. They could not last. But listen, you mentioned, so you knew Anna Fermo back then.
Yeah, I know him now.
Okay.
We're still in touch,
the 1971 New York City Golden Gloves, right before the fight of the century with Ali and Frazier. Anna Fermo lost in the finals against a future world champion.
Eddie Gregory, Eddie Mustafa Muhammad.
Yeah.
Eddie
you got it.
Held all fight long. He just kept grabbing Vito behind the head all fight. You want to hear a funny story? 3 days later, there was a smoker show in Brooklyn. And those smoker shows used to sell out. The churches used to put them on, okay? They couldn't do that in this day and age. And then about 1,500 people would show up, which would be about the capacity. And Vito thought he'd be fighting a rematch with Eddie Gregory, not Mustafa Muhammad. Vito showed up. He was so mad, raring to go, but Eddie never showed up. And why should Eddie show up 3 days later after he beat Vito to box him in a smoker show? But sure. Vito was hell-bent on gaining his revenge. Later, they actually got to spar a number of times as pros. And Vito always said that Eddie Gregory and Eugene Cyclone Hart were the 2 hardest punches he ever was in against. But he said when he sparred with Eddie in the early years as pros that they tried to knock one another out. So the rivalry was continuing even in the gym. You'd know more about that type of stuff than I would. You know, the gym rivalry is the way they carry over.
I mean, I'll tell you right now, one of my first fights after Frazier Ali fighting was Anna Fermo, Hagler, and Minter, and all those guys in the middleweight back then, and some great fights. I mean, Vito, maybe not as skilled as Hagler, but boy, he had a huge heart. And
I have a small request, John. Can you prepare the trivia questions from now on for the show? Because Mac is giving me these distorted questions I've been missing and making me look bad.
I get them.
Make me look bad in the boxing one.
I get them, Iceman. I get them.
IBF question. When was the last heavyweight 15-round IBF title fight? I mean, who cares?
Stop it. You're just sore. You're sore because I even get you in boxing. Yeah. Hey, Iceman, we got to let you go. We got to get to commercial but thank you. And I'm going to start talking a little bit more with you every week about training. I got a lot of questions for you. We want to see your knowledge at work. And it's always great having you on. You're one of my favorite guests. Yeah. And thanks again for coming in, Iceman.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys. Have a good show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good show.
So there you go, Jack, the great Iceman John Scully.
Good stuff with the conditioning, with the training. It's a different type of training, from sport to sport, and especially boxing. Very hard if you come from another sport, as he
definitely. And I know in the scuffles I've gotten in over my lifetime with other people, the best way to win is to outlast them when they run out of breath.
Yeah.
That's when you really can. I shouldn't be talking about that. But anyway, so we're gonna go up to our official timeout, guys. We'll be back soon, right after about 4.5 minutes. We actually got an advertiser on our website that I'll talk about when we get back to. I got a trivia question coming up for Jack, of course, and a lot more fun ahead. So come back and join us in about 4.5 minutes, and we'll see you then.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
When you hear the word asthma, you probably think of shortness of breath, coughing, or inhalers. Lots of things can trigger asthma, but the fact is that asthma doesn't just attack, it can kill. But with proper medical management, asthma is controllable. If you experience shortness of breath, wheezing, tightness in your chest, or persistent nighttime coughing, you may have asthma. See your doctor and get the facts. You'll breathe easier. For more information, call 211 Info Line. A message from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, keeping Connecticut healthy.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma.
I love you too. Okay, how about tasting this stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again?
Alex is just
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed. Yeah, well, Kyle's not here. How come? Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah. 0 tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's a first offense, right?
That we know of. Why should that matter? We need not to drink. I made it clear to Matt, that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's going to be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he going to know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, Bill. but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Try.
Welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show, everybody. We just had the Iceman John Scully on, talking a little bit about boxing news and about what it takes to be a trainer and what it takes to be in condition to be a boxer. I fooled around with it once. Jack did better than me. He actually sparred with the great Vito Antuofermo, and people don't realize, Jack, what it takes just to get in the ring and become a professional, never mind becoming one of the best.
Well, it's different types of conditioning and so on. A friend of mine is a physical trainer, Dave Scooter Honig. He's trained several world champions. They come to him strictly for the physical conditioning, the modern conditioning. And his complaint to me was so many of these boxers come to him out of shape when they start training camp. And he's got to basically sometimes adapt a crash course for them. And I think the problem with all athletes, and I think when all athletes' skill level starts declining, is during the off season when they're not doing anything, okay? Yeah. And especially a seasonal sport, you got to keep in shape year round. I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean, you have to treat it like your full-time job.
Right. And what I like to do real quick, Jack, is do a quick commercial read. And we do have an affiliate at our website. If you get a chance, go check out our website. You'll see information there of all our insiders, including the great Jack Hirsch. We have links to different places on our website that will bring you to some of the shows they do or sites that they're on. So if you go to macandjacksports.com, Mac Sports Insiders, you'll see a link to one of our affiliates. And if you want to get the clothing of your favorite team's jerseys, hats, all gear, we have the place for you, Fanatic. Just go to the macandjacksports.com website, Mac's Sports Insiders, and click on their link. It brings you right to their store just in time for Christmas. You can order for your special someone's birthday or just treat yourself to your favorite team's clothing and gear. That's macandjacksports.com. The website is Mac Sports Insiders. Click on the Fanatics link for all your team's clothing and gear. So I'm excited about having our first affiliate, Jack. And if the viewers out there want to support our show, it will really help us out. And you can't beat going to the Fanatics, Jack. I don't know if you ever visited the site, but it's one of the best sites out there for sports gear.
And especially in this day and age where it's a little easier to shop online.
Definitely.
What's going on.
Definitely. I mean, that's the way to go. We'll have other affiliates coming on board. We'll have those Google ads up for you to check out different deals that you can go and you can purchase online, which again, as you said, today it's hard to get out there and get around, especially with all the new rules they're putting back for the fall and winter. So, Jack, this is one of my favorite parts of the show.
I thought I was done with the trivia question. John gave me a trivia question. I got it correct. So,
right? No.
I'm not having a rematch with the trivia question.
No, sir, Jack.
I didn't sign a deal at all. I got it right.
Yes.
You're giving it to me till I get it wrong today.
No, Jack. You know I've got to ask you a trivia. I got to try and keep my winning streak alive against you because you are so knowledgeable in the history of sports that it's fun to see you struggle. It makes my morning. So Today's trivia question for you, Jack, is there was only one scoreless game in NFL history. The score ending 0-0 was in 1943. What teams played in that game, Jack?
Chicago Bears.
Is that your answer?
One of them.
Is that your answer?
No,
Yeah, I want both.
Two teams. That can't be my answer. Chicago Bears didn't play the Chicago Bears.
Right.
So which two teams? Am I correct with the Bears as one of them?
Jack, that's cheating.
No. If I missed them and the Bears aren't, I missed the question. Not bottom line.
Okay, Jack. Bottom line is that is incorrect, Jack.
It's incorrect. So I got the question wrong, Mac. Even no matter what other team I came, you're trying to torture me here. I'm wrong. I can't vindicate myself. Two teams I would think, you know what you think about old-time NFL franchises, and they don't get any older than really the Chicago Bears, Papa Bear, George Halas. Give me the answer, Mac. I'm stumped.
Well, this is all thanks to our assistant producer Linda, who dug this one out. You know, I normally go through and I dig out these questions, but she's the one that came out with that. We were saying, hey, listen, has the NFL team a game ever ended in 0-0? So that sparked her into going and investigating. And the two teams involved in that 1943 game that ended in a 0-0 tie were, believe it or not, the New York Giants and the Detroit Lions, Jack.
You know, funny thing, I was thinking of Bears and Lions for some reason, two old-time franchises. I would have thought of the New York Giants.
I know, me either, because
I wouldn't have thought of the New York Giants.
Me either.
I didn't know the answer point blank because I didn't know about the 0-0 score, one game in NFL history. I flat out didn't know the answer. So it's not like I could have said, but I would have.
Yeah, that's what surprised me, Jack. That's what surprised me, that the Giants were one of the teams. Again, when Linda went and looked that up, I thought, you know, maybe one of the teams that weren't that good back then. And the Giants during that time had a pretty solid team. Detroit did have a good defense, and the Giants. That's the first time, and that's the only time in history. So that's very interesting.
Great.
So, Jack.
Dug up. Good job, Linda. That's a great question. No, I like trivia questions like that. I'm going to tell you why I like questions like that. Because now we learn something new. Unlike your questions, Mac, where you just want to stump me, nothing is learned. There's no educational value to it at all. This question by Linda, there was educational value. Now I know something, part of New York Giant history, that they took part in the only scoreless game in NFL history. I learned something new. I like trivia questions like that.
Yes, I do too, Jack. I do too. But it's a lot more fun just to see you to think and watch you struggle. So this is
that one I missed so bad. I didn't struggle. I was knocked out quick on that one.
This is one of my favorite segments I do with you, Jack, and it's called Ain't Gonna Happen. And we're gonna give a little love to the NBA. They're starting, according to the agreement, December 22nd. It just seems like they just stopped. So they'll be playing during the NFL year. It should be interesting to see how the ratings go with the NFL and basketball going at the same time. NFL is a powerhouse when it comes to ratings, and NBA kind of fell off last year. So we're going to do some NBA at first questions of It Ain't Gonna Happen. So the Knicks draft a great player, and we'll go 500 this year.
Ain't gonna happen. I mean, they're going number 8 in the draft this year. Is their highest pick. They have 3 draft picks, but going number 8 is the highest. And this isn't the NFL where you can get arguably an outstanding play at number 8. You got to kind of really luck out at number 8. There's already talk of the Knicks trying to move down in the draft. If they somehow move down in the draft, fine. They're not a 500 caliber team. Under Tom Thibodeau, if they take a gentle step towards that, then the season will be a success. But they're not going to go 41-41 if it's an 82-game schedule.
Definitely agree with that.
They're starting Christmas time. I don't think they've decided on the exact amount of games yet.
No. The Nets team will play together this year without any controversy.
Ain't going to happen because Kyrie Irving won't be able to keep his mouth shut. And he's a lightning rod, pure and simple. He wanted out of Cleveland, and then he went to Boston, an ideal situation. They were ready to win, ready to go to the finals. Didn't fully get along with the other players, and he just was a pain in the behind. That's all there was to it when he was with Boston. Now with the Nets, he's saying that anyone could coach this team. We're going to run it by committee. And he also has Kevin Durant's ears. Great as Kevin Durant is on the court, he's a bit of a follower off it. And that won't be a good thing, him following Kyrie Irving.
The new coach of the 76ers will find the formula for the 76ers to win the East this year, Jack.
To go to the finals, you're talking about.
To win the East in basketball.
They'd have to. Ain't gonna happen. Listen, Doc Rivers is a nice man, a very nice man, and a good coach. Okay, but this call Doc Rivers an elite coach at this time, I think that's passed him by. He had some very good LA Clipper teams, and he was with them a lot of years, and they never went to the finals. They never went to the finals, okay, let alone win an NBA title when he was with the Clippers. I know he won an NBA championship when he was coaching the Celtics. He's a good coach, Doc Rivers, but I don't think he's the major difference maker the Sixers think he's going to be.
A quick hockey question for you, Jack, and it ain't going to happen. The Rangers used last year's success as a catapult to go to the Stanley Cup.
You know, I got actually on, if you look here too, Mac,
yes.
I can stand. I got a New York, look at this.
Oh, my God. I didn't even know that.
You couldn't see this on the air.
Yeah.
Ain't going to happen because hockey is the ultimate wild card sport. I mean, season to season, playoff to playoff, it's so unpredictable. The Rangers can have a phenomenal regular season, but an 8th seed can knock off a number 1 seed very easily in the playoffs, only because of the unpredictability of the sport of hockey. I have to say, ain't going to happen.
They did pick up a big number 1 draft choice, too.
Well, he's 18 years old.
Yeah.
You know, so it's really I'm not saying the Rangers aren't going to have a great regular season. I think they're going to be really good during the regular season. But the playoffs, as I said, are such a wild card. It's hard to predict, make any type of prediction. I like to sit down before every season and write down predictions, baseball, football, basketball. Basketball, we have a good idea who's going to contend for the NBA title, Mac. Let's be honest. We have a good idea. And football, you have a pretty good idea too, as we do in baseball. But something about hockey, the playoffs are out of whack. I mean, it's really out of whack.
It's tough. It's very tough to predict. You're 100% right. Football, Miami quarterback Tua Tagovailoa will be the rookie of the year this year, Jack.
Ain't going to happen because he's making his move a little too late. I don't know who's going to win it. But when you essentially start playing at the halfway point, it kind of works against you. And it only counts for the regular season.
Right.
That's what people don't understand. If it counted the playoffs as well and the Dolphins made the playoffs, I could say, you know, what was going to happen. You know, I think Tua, if you ask me, is Tua going to go to the Hall of Fame someday, I'm going to say it's going to happen.
Wow.
But when we talk about rookie of the year for, you know, this year, I'd have to say ain't going to happen. He just didn't have the credits, all the games, you know.
Yeah,
he missed half the year.
Unlike Burrows, who's played all year.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
Herbert is still in contention.
Sure.
Those guys are way ahead of him at this point.
I definitely agree with that. I know about the Hall of Fame. That's a long time away.
It's a bold prediction.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
If he stays healthy, let me put that.
Okay. The Bills will represent the AFC in the Super Bowl, Jack. They had that big win over Seattle, and they kind of outplayed Seattle. So the Chiefs the Ravens, the Steelers. Do we put the Bills in that class where they could or they will represent the AFC?
Well, you're saying will represent. If you're saying could represent, that's
I say will.
question. Obviously, anyone could. No, it ain't going to happen. If the Bills, they've got their goal is to win one playoff game. They've been making it to the playoffs, but they've been getting eliminated in the playoffs. Like last year, that they had played that great game with Houston, in which they let that game get away and lost, their first game of the playoffs as they did. And if they win a playoff game this year, make the playoffs, win a playoff game, then the year's been a success. But to think that they're going to leapfrog over all the other teams, especially the Kansas City Chiefs, and beat out the Ravens and beat out the Steelers, I mean, it's quite a hurdle. It ain't going to happen.
Yeah. Usyk gets a shot at the heavyweight title within the next 2 years, Jack.
Who gets a shot?
Usyk.
Oh, Usyk. You know what? I thought you were in football, and I thought you were saying Houston is getting a shot at the title. I'm thinking NFL. You out of your mind?
Right.
Yeah, of course. There's already Anthony Joshua's promoter, Eddie Hearn, is already talking in terms of if a Tyson Fury fight gets delayed for Joshua, that they're maybe going to fight Usyk in the interim. Usyk is a threat to Joshua. Make no mistake about it. You'd have to favor Joshua because of his size and everything else. But Usyk is a definite threat. And, yeah, he's going to be in the mix. And I would think before the year's over, at the very least, he's going to fight for one of the belts.
And I agree with that too, Jack. So we got a new segment we're going to try, Jack, for today, and it's called the Coach's Desk. And this is where we start talking a little bit about football and a lot. We're going to go from the basics all the way through the most complex, Jack. And how this is going to work, and this is the way I want to set it up, is that you're going to be, I'm the head coach of a high school or small college, and I'm looking for an offensive coordinator. So here we go. We got the Coach's Desk, and you're the only one left, Jack. I mean, a lot of teams, especially in high school and small colleges, they don't have the opportunity to get and hire the greatest offensive coordinators like the big colleges do, and of course the pros do. So we got a team that we got to turn around, Jack. I mean, the program is terrible. I've been hired to turn the team around, and I need an offensive coordinator. And you're on my list as the last one. I went through all of them, and here you go. So I'm going to explain a little bit about what I expect. And maybe give you a tutorial because I know you have never played football.
I never played the game, but I've always played offensive coordinator as a fan for decades. I'm always thinking what play they should run before the play's been ran. So I've always been playing offensive coordinator in my head.
Right. So we're going to go over the offensive advantages first. We're going to go right to the base of what the offense has and what can give them the jump on the defense, because offense is supposed to be the aggressor, where the defense is the reactor to what the offense does. Now, the defense can play aggressive in certain situations, but it's all about being an offensive coordinator to use your advantages. And the first is the snap count and cadence, Jack, okay? So what your biggest advantage is when the play is going to start, and they don't. And to be able to change that snap count and a cadence is very important to keep the defensive line off balance. And you don't even see in the pros them doing it enough, because as you see, the defensive linemen are almost in the backfield as soon as he gets the ball, and that's the defensive lineman timing his cadence and his count. So before, if you don't do this correctly, if you don't do a quick snap, if you don't do a long count and change your count, you don't able your offensive lineman to either get in position to pass block or to get into their body if it's a running play. And you'll notice a lot of times during a run, a defensive lineman is breaking the gap into the backfield. And so you want the offensive line to move them off the ball. So,
Mac, is this different from a quick huddle?
yes, it is. It's exactly what you should be teaching your offense in the beginning of the season. And so what you would need to do, Jack, is during the drills in preseason, whether they're doing sprints, whether they're doing, hitting each other, whatever drill this is, you should be using the snap count, not the whistle. The whistle means stop, right? The referee blows the whistle. And you'll see a lot of coaches that are doing practices and they're blowing a whistle. That does not help the team at all. You want them to get used to changing the count so they don't jump off sides, so that they get off the ball fast. It's very basic. But even if you look at the pros, they don't do this enough, Jack. So if you watch the Giants game last week, you'll see Sid Hutt, and they snapped that like 5 or 6 times in a row. And eventually, the defensive linemen start timing this. And so this is one of your first and basic advantages you have. So this is what I would urge you to do first. Your first thing is when you get your offensive linemen together, when you pick out your offensive linemen and your running backs, and you're ready to drill these guys and get them used to playing football, you change the count. The second biggest advantage is you know what the play is. All right, the defense does not know what you're going to run. They can guess. They can first down, you're probably going to run a certain percentage of times. On third and long, you're probably going to throw the ball. They can guess that and set their defense. An important thing to do, Jack, is to make every play in a series look the same. So that the defense, if you run one play out of one series, say you run a wing formation, just say, and you're out of that wing formation, it's strong left, you hand the ball off to your running back off tackle. They can know this is going to happen. But if you can put a dive, a sweep, a reverse, a pass off of this formation, it leaves the defense guessing. So it's very important when you run series of plays that you make all those plays in that series look the same so you don't tip the defense off.
Mac, I got to tell you something quickly. I was a phys ed major in Brooklyn College, and one of the courses I had to take was football, a semester of football. And our professor, his name was Jerry Evans. He was an All-American back in the old days at Penn State.
Excellent.
And I remember he kept running one play, single wing right formation unbalanced line, over and over and over that one play. This takes me back to my youth when I had football as a class at Brooklyn College. As was part of the credits you had to take to become a phys ed teacher.
Right. And I mean,
stuff.
I mean, Jack, again, this is not for, the head coaches and big college programs or even middle. And it's not, of course, it's not for pros. But if they don't teach this in the beginning and they don't give them their advantages, which they should be doing. And I guess when you go through football enough, you forget about these things. You're concentrating on the more complex issues. But these are very fundamental things that you should be teaching your team, and that the pro teams and college teams don't use it enough. Last thing, Jack, is you know what the play is and you know where it's going. Again, the defensive coordinator will know that you might use the wide side of the field because there's more room to run. I mean, you go to the short side of the field, there's not a lot of room to run. But you can mix this up and throw this off. There's another point real quick, Jack, before you say something. A right-handed quarterback, the plays are normally geared to the right. So you want to run the play as a right-handed team. They call that a right-handed offense. To the left a lot. Run counters off of this so that the defense is not stacking the wide side of the field too much, and that you are using this to your advantage, so that when you go and you call a play where it's going, they don't overstack the wide side.
It's interesting that you just mentioned the defensive coordinator tries to know where the play's going, because Lamar Jackson said a day ago the opposition knows what plays that they're running. He's starting to complain. And I was going to ask you, well, how does that happen? How are they going to know what the Ravens are calling, what plays? I mean, who's tipping them off? How
Well,
do
you
they
know,
know that?
Well, Jack, there's three things and defense that they do, and I've worked as a defensive coordinator too. You're going to check. You're going to do the wide side of field. You're going to check and see what quarterback is he right-handed or left-handed, and you're going to go off down in distance, where you're on the field, and the time left in the half of the game to make educated guesses on what the offense is going to do. And if they do these easy things to read, and of course you've got film study too, which you use. But if they do these things, and a certain formation means a certain thing, it takes away your advantages as an offense and turns them over to the defense, which already has the biggest advantage, being able to use their hands. So that's the first part of that series we're going to run. I know it might be boring to some folks. I find it exciting, and I think that it's a great thing to share, just like we did with Scully with the training. So, Jack, we're going to go ahead and take our second and last time out for our show here, last commercial break, so that everybody can get a quick stretch in, and that we can go ahead and we can get our thoughts together. Because up next we have, of course, this day in sports history. Any other nuggets that you got that you want to share with the audience? And we'll be right back, folks, after these messages. So let me get you there. Pop. And
if you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
When you hear the word asthma, you probably think of shortness of breath, coughing, or inhalers. Lots of things can trigger asthma, but the fact is that asthma doesn't just attack, it can kill. But with proper medical management, asthma is controllable. If you experience shortness of breath, wheezing, tightness in your chest, or persistent nighttime coughing, you may have asthma. See your doctor and get the facts. You'll breathe easier. For more information, call 211 Info Line. A message from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, keeping Connecticut healthy.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma.
I love you too. Okay, how about tasting this stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye, Dad.
Bye-bye.
Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again?
Alex is just
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Now we're getting killed. Yeah, well, Kyle's not here. How come? Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah. Zero tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's a first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I made it clear to Matt, that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's gonna be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he gonna know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, Bill, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
How you doing?
Welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show, where we give you all the Northeastern sports updates. New York, Boston, and Philly. We're on Wednesday through Sunday, 8 to 10 a.m. You can see us live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch. On Facebook, username MacMan62. Search Facebook for that. MacandJackSports.com for our shows. Instagram. We got a great Instagram site, Jack, that has all the local teams, all their update and news on there. So go to that site. Not only can you check on your team, but you can check on the rivals in your division and see what they're up to. Our website, Mac Sports Insiders. That's also MacandJackSports.com. Right now, we have an affiliate with us, Fanatics. If you go to our website, which is a very good website, folks, and you click on their link down at the top of the page in our store section on Fanatics, it'll bring you right to the store. And you know, you could order for Christmas. That's coming up fast, Jack. You can order for somebody's birthday. You can treat yourself to your team's favorite clothing and gear. So go ahead over to Jack and
Got
Mac.
to get a Yankee cap, Mac. That's
Oh yeah,
the
definitely.
place to go.
Oh, definitely. I mean, all jerseys, gear, caps, sweatshirts, everything's there that you could imagine. They got some great deals right now going on over there. And like you said before, it's a great way to shop right now, Jack. I mean, you can't go out and to the stores like you used to be able to, and there's certain rules if you do. It's easy to order online, and this is a great site. And Christmas is around the corner. God, I mean, we're almost to Thanksgiving, Jack, already.
I'll tell you, it moves along, but once again, like you said it best, it's a great place to shop, and it has all you need for whatever team you're rooting for, so on. And yeah, absolutely.
So, I know a lot of people. We had Keith on there yesterday. He said he spent almost $10,000 over the years over there, and I said,
wow.
we wish we had an affiliation back then.
I hope he has some of those reward credits that Keith thought to
right.
bonuses in that too. But
definitely. Yeah. I mean, listen. Again, you know, Christmas is coming up. I don't know how it's going to be out there with the stores this year, Jack, with the virus, and this is the easiest way to order right now. So go ahead over there on our website at macandjacksports.com and check out the link to Fanatics, and
absolutely
right there. So Jack, we had Iceman John Scully on, and this is for the viewers that weren't with us earlier. You missed a heck of a segment where he actually broke down what it takes to be a boxer. And again, you know, we look at the running backs in football, we look at the pitchers in baseball. You know, we look at the basketball players, and we say, all I got to do is shoot a basketball or run with a football. And in boxing, you need to be in tremendous shape. And a lot of athletes that try to go over and box. I remember Too Tall Jones. I don't know if you remember that when he tried to be a boxer for a while. It's just not the same.
Too Tall Jones couldn't punch. He was a powerhouse as a tackle in football, enormously strong. But it's a different technique. He was a heavyweight. He just had no power, never learned how to punch. And he had 6 fights. He actually won them all, but he was given opposition he was expected to beat. Let's put it that way. And it's a different sports. You know, certain great fighters, boxers, are not good athletes.
Right.
To play other sports, and conversely have other great athletes. The great Jim Brown,
Right.
okay, who many consider the greatest football player, period, of all time. He was close friends with Muhammad Ali. Jim Brown thought of boxing. He thought, oh, he could maybe be heavyweight champion of the world. And he was telling Ali, they were hanging out one day, and he said to Ali, I'd like to have maybe an opportunity to fight you for the title. And Ali said, you have to be joking with me, Jim. And he said, Jim, if they stopped, they were in the park. He said, Jim, try to hit me with everything you have. Throw punches at me. I promise I won't hit you back. Jim Brown threw punches at him for about 30 seconds. Ali didn't bother to throw a punch. And after Jim Brown couldn't hit Ali for 30 seconds, Jim Brown said, you know, you're right. I don't think I'm going to try this. Okay.
You know, I watched a couple of Scully's fights when he was in contention. And I'll tell you, he was a very good technician. I mean, he came in. He was great defensively. I mean, I watched him fight some of the better fighters in the world, and he was quite a technician. A lot of his fights were very close, and he was very close to becoming a champion in both divisions. Jack, I mean, I know you've watched him over the years, and you've watched a lot of fighters, but I was very impressed with how good he really was as a fighter.
You know, boxing is a thankless sport, like all the sports are. Only about the top 1% become elite. The top of all the people who put on gloves, who tried to box, maybe 1% of those become champions or top contenders. The others kind of fall by the wayside. Same thing with any sport, football, baseball. Of everyone who plays baseball, how many get to the big leagues? Less than 1% who actually try.
Right.
It's that way, but it's that way in boxing. Unlike baseball that has hundreds of players, and football hundreds of players that revolve and, make it to the NFL and Major League Baseball and so on. In boxing, only about less than 1% actually get to the big money, get to impact money, what makes a major difference. So you talk about all or nothing sports. I mean, that's what, boxing is, and a few other sports are that way as well. The Masters is going on now. How many players become elite golfers, for example? I mean, it's kind of such a difference between the world-class athlete and the regular one. I meant to ask you a question. You set up all that defense in football a little while ago, and the offense, the defense. Does that take into account crowd noise? Because if you're playing somewhere like in the New Orleans Superdome, it's so loud over there. They say the quarterback can't shout loud enough for the offense to hear what he's doing. Does that make a major difference? Or does bad weather make a major difference?
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about crowd noise, you're talking about audibles, calling them at the line, which is a lot different. And if the crowd is behind you, of course they're quiet while you're on offense, and they're loud when the other team is on offense. So a lot of that, the snap count has to change, which is a great advantage for the defense. Maybe in the huddle, you change the count maybe for a few plays in a row. But as far as calling audibles, Jack, it's very tough. And that's why it's so hard to win in Seattle, in New Orleans, and in Kansas City. You pretty much have to train, or I should say prepare, make that part of your preparation during the week. When there is an audible, to use hand signals, or you know what I'm saying, to communicate to the wide receivers that are way away from the line. And sometimes the center, it gets so loud that the center doesn't know, or the offensive line doesn't hear the count, and the ball is snapped, and the offensive line doesn't even come off the ball, especially at the tackle position. As far as the passing game goes, believe it or not, in weather, the offense has an advantage in bad weather because the defensive backs are usually running backwards, are reacting to the wide receiver routes, and even though the ball may be slippery, the wide receivers in any bad weather have a distinct advantage over the defensive backs. The biggest problem, believe it or not, during the bad weather games is for the running backs holding on to the football because they're getting hit, as they're running with the ball. and it's hard to get a grasp on it. But if you have a quarterback that can throw in the rain and that can throw in the snow, as you saw, a great example of that was when the Giants beat Green Bay up in the snow, and Plaxico Burress dominated the defensive backs because they have to react to the route, and it's so hard to do to get your footing to react to a wide receiver making a move.
But you're talking about the Sub-Zero game. I mean,
right.
Certain games should not be played. I think it's inhuman to expect football players to play in 0-degree temperature. It's insane.
Well, then what do you do, Jack? What do you do?
The Giants, I forgot who it was, but I recall the quote. He was an offensive lineman. I forgot which one. He said it was so cold. By the time the game came into overtime, I didn't care whether we won or lost.
Yeah.
I just wanted to get out of there. That's how bad it was. And
well, I mean, can you imagine? Can you imagine, Jack, back in the day before they had heated benches and all those warming, they actually lit fires on the sideline to stay warm. I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to force teams to play inside? I don't think you can do that.
You know, Bud Grant, the old-time Viking coach, the Vikings went to 4 Super Bowls with him. Right. They lost all 4, but he was a great player, too, back, in the old times before the Super Bowl. He wouldn't let the Viking players use hand warmers on the sidelines.
Right.
Vikings used to play all their games outdoors, and it used to be freezing. And I remember the Vikings are playing one game, and the broadcaster said, "Oh, we have a heat wave in Minnesota. It's 22 degrees."
Right.
A heat wave. Yeah.
Right. And they had a great advantage, too. I mean, see, the teams that play in that all the time, in that type of weather, have a distinct advantage, and that's why they say it's good to have a running game, which to me, if the running backs are used to running in the cold and getting hit, it's a lot different, and that's why the Giants were so successful against Green Bay, because of the distinct passing game with Plaxico Burress and knowing where he was going, and, of course, the defensive backs did.
Well, one of those games, you mentioned a running game, Mac. The Rams had an old-time coach named Chuck Knox.
Yeah.
He was their coach the early years of the Super Bowl. I hated Chuck Knox, hated him. Because his whole thing, we got to establish a running game. I hated that. I love the modern NFL. Years ago, I felt the way to score is passing the ball primarily. But you have these old-time coaches who love their smash-mouth football. To me, it was all stupid. Smash-mouth football, keep playing it. The only way you play smash-mouth football and you keep running straight ahead is if the defense just can't stop you. You have a punishing back like a John Riggins, and you can keep taking it down the field. That's fine, but that's a rarity.
Yeah.
Knox has the ball in a playoff game. Listen to this. It's 4th down and 1 inch from the goal line. And literally an inch from the goal line. What does he do? He goes for the field goal, the idiot. For the field goal. Okay, the worst that'll happen, you're an inch away. You try to score. You try to pound it in. And if you don't do it, the Vikings are backed up in their own end zone. And you've got a very good defense. That's the worst case scenario. So you'll be in position to get the field goal anyway. So the idiot goes for the field goal attempt. It gets blocked by the Vikings, and they return it all the way for a touchdown. And that was really basically the game right there. They lost them at 24-13. And these coaches who wanted to establish a ground game, I mean, come on. Jack, it's very easy to say. You throw the ball down the field, you get the most yardage. I just never liked that.
Well, Jack, I mean, to prove your point wrong, if the Giants didn't do that in the 1990 Super Bowl against the Bills, they definitely would have won, especially with a backup quarterback. I think it's very important, even in today's NFL, to have a running game to give the quarterback more time. And they kind of work together. I don't see a team, we talk about the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs have a good running game. And maybe the passing game sets up the run with them. But I'll tell you right now, the Titans, who beat the Ravens badly in the playoff game to play the Chiefs and were ahead of the Chiefs, are one of the best running teams in the league. And I think if if Tannehill had a better game, of course they would have won. But I still think there's a place in the NFL to run the ball for definitely.
Oh, no, don't. Maybe I explained it wrong. The running game's important. Don't get me wrong. But you have these coaches who make it such a major priority over the passing game. That's what I don't like at all. You refer to the Giants Super Bowl. They had to run the ball a little more. They had to turn it into that type of game because the Buffalo Bills were the ones with the high-powered offense.
Very true. Very true. And not to mention that Phil Simms was in the starting quarterback, or it would have been a different game plan. So let's get, Jack, before we run out of time, to On This Day in Sports, where we cover the birthdays and the events. And we'll start with the events. In 1950, now I didn't know this, Gene Roberts sets a New York Giant rushing record at 218 yards against the Chicago Cardinals. That surprised me, number one, because I really haven't heard too much about Gene Roberts, and that there was a Giants running back that actually ran for over 200 yards. Granted, it was against the Chicago Cardinals, but that's not a running back you talk about when you talk about the Giants.
Donnie, you blew it, Mac. You would have had me for the next trivia question. You should have saved that. That's a hard one, yeah.
Yes.
Good one, yeah.
In 1953, the U.S. District Judge Grimm rules the NFL can't block out home games. Now, I remember, Jack, in the 70s when the Giants were not that good, to say the least, that they would do this because they didn't sell out the stadium. I don't see that much anymore. Of course, they can't sell the stadium at all this year, but I really haven't seen that since the viewers really started getting upset. The biggest controversy there was that these broadcasts are supposed to be for the public, and so there was a big controversy. Grimm ruled in favor of the NFL, and that did happen. I recall that in the 70s when the Giants had a bad team. So
the rule was 3 days before. If it wasn't sold out, 3 days before, then they could black the game out, because the motivation behind that was if you're going to telecast each game, fans were going to stay home, especially for sport like the NFL, in which the later season games especially are played in very cold weather. And fans obviously are going to want to watch the game from the comfort of their home if it's very cold, if it's poor weather. Sure. But that rule no longer exists. So if it does exist, it's certainly not enforced.
That's the truth. In 1958, Bob Hurley of the Yankees wins the Cy Young. Another pitcher we don't talk about, Jack. Bob Hurley, we talk about Whitey Ford.
Bob Hurley.
Yes.
Bullet Bob, his nickname was Bullet Bob Turley. A hard throw in his day. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And in 1975, Tom Seaver wins the third Cy Young, an incredible pitcher, terrific Tom. There's not enough to say about him, one of the greatest pitchers of all time. So in 1975, he wins his third Cy Young, Jack.
And it's insane that he wasn't a career Met. And the weird part, what people don't realize, is Tom Seaver did come back to the Mets a second time late in his career. And you would think the Mets would have been classy enough to see to it that he'd finish his career as a Met after the fiasco of him being traded the first time. But no, he winds up, and people don't realize this, with the 1986 Boston Red Sox, who were playing the Mets. He was in the opposite dugout.
Yeah, that's very true.
The injured list. Could you imagine, Mac, the storyline had Tom Seaver not been injured? I bet you, Mac, he would have been in there in that 9th inning of the 6th game.
Yeah.
John McNamara would have thought, wow, let's Seaver close this game out for us. What a story that would have been had Seaver closed the Mets out in 86. And those Met teams never had a world championship. Tom was way past his peak. It was his last season. But what a story.
That would have been unbelievable. We got some big birthdays, Jack. 1944, the famous broadcaster Al Michaels, of course, of the NFL, and he had that big miracle on ice call. He was born in 1944, Jack.
One of the great broadcasters of all time, and Al Michaels has done so many sports. Yeah. I mean, what can't he do? I mean, and he's going strong today.
Yeah.
with Sunday Night Football, him and Chris Collingsworth. And they've eased Michael's schedule a little bit. A few games, I think Ryan Rucco does in place of Al Michaels. And Al Michaels likes that deal because it eases his travel time a little.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. So, I mean, the great Al Michaels, like I said, that Do You Believe in Miracle Call will always live on in sports history. In 1964, Jack, New York Jets defensive tackle Eric Howard was born. Again, you know, we cover the Jets, and I know the Jets fans probably remember him. Me not too well, but he was born in 1964, Jack. In 1967, someone that you've definitely probably covered, Michael Moorer, was born in 67, a former heavyweight champion, Jack.
Yeah, he was a light heavyweight champion. Actually, he moved up from light heavyweight to heavyweight. He beat Evander Holyfield for the title. Moorer could be a bit of an in and out. He could be a little timid, so on. But he accomplished, a great deal. People don't talk about him when they talk about the great light heavyweight and heavyweights. But, he had a heck of a career.
He had his time, definitely.
Yeah.
Sammy Sosa was born in 1968. Of course, we remember him from that big home run race with McGuire and the steroid controversy. Sammy Sosa, born in 1968, Jack.
And the corked bat,
yes.
as well, coming
yes.
out.
Yes.
It's a shame, though, in a way, some of these guys who are really iconic. The Cub fans love Sammy Sosa. And it's like they have no place in baseball. Some guys are forgiven, some guys aren't.
Yeah.
And it's just a shame to go from such an iconic status to nowhere land.
I heard a lot of stories about him afterwards. And I don't know if this is true or not, Jack. I seem to remember reading it or watching it, where Sammy Sosa is not even really welcome by the Cubs anymore. I don't know if that's true or not. It's if that is true, which I'm just talking off memory from years ago, and it might have changed. That would really be a shame. Sammy Sosa was a great ball player. He offensively, defensively, he was a good ball player. So it's a shame if that's so. But you're right. It takes one thing to ruin somebody's legacy, Jack. One thing.
President George Bush, the second one. He said the biggest mistake he ever made in his professional life wasn't anything he did as president. It was as an owner of the Texas Rangers. It was trading Sammy Sosa from Texas.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So this is another big controversial birthday. Tanya Harding, American figure skating. We all remember, and probably is another thing that will go down in history forever. Nancy Kerrigan, the leg, the bat. Was she involved? It was her boyfriend. We don't know. But she was a good skater. And again, this one thing and how bad it was to almost take Nancy Kerrigan out of the competition. And she did bounce back and place in the Olympics. But Tanya Harding, another figure that was very controversial.
Well, Nancy Kerrigan ultimately was unaffected, and she got to participate in the Olympics and won a silver medal. It was controversial. A lot of people feel she should have gotten the gold medal, and what a story that would have been, getting the gold medal. But Nancy Kerrigan, by all reports, isn't always the friendliest person. From what you hear, I don't know her. Maybe she's a sweetheart.
Right.
I don't know. I'm not judging her myself. But Tanya Harding claimed she had no knowledge of anything. Maybe she didn't know beforehand what her boyfriend and his friend was going to do. Maybe she didn't know. But she certainly knew afterwards. And believe me, had she gotten the gold medal, knowing that they took Nancy Kerrigan out, she wouldn't have blinked. It wouldn't have bothered,
Yeah.
From my impression is it wouldn't have bothered her at all. And
I definitely agree.
Listen, I hope she's found peace. She tried boxing, actually.
I heard that.
Fights, it didn't work out. And
yeah. Well, there's no baseball.
I hope Tanya Harding's gotten, on with her life in a positive way. And
hey, Jack, there's
ultimately, it didn't affect Nancy Kerrigan. It hurt Tanya Harding's reputation, and it's a very sad thing.
Well, you know, Jack, there is no baseball bats allowed in the ring. Russell Westbrook, NBA star, born in 1988 with the Thunder and the Rockets. There's a lot of information that he may want to leave. I believe it's so. Jack, it's time to end our show.
I got stuff to say about Russell Westbrook. Maybe next show. Maybe.
Okay, that sounds great. And thanks for reminding him of that, because tomorrow on our weekend preview, we do have Byron Williams scheduled to join us as our NFL analyst, former Giant and wide receiver and Eagle wide receiver, and Keith Engel, who came in and co-hosted. He knows a lot about the Patriots, and he'll share all that knowledge with us. So, Jack, another show is over, and I had a great time again. I'm glad you're back. I missed you yesterday.
Thanks.
Keith did a great job.
Miss
But
you
you know,
guys, yeah.
It's always great having you here on the show.
Tomorrow, so Keith is back.
Yes, he is. So have a great day, everybody, and enjoy your Thursday. And we'll see you tomorrow.